Hey folks, Brendan here from Bluelight, going live for you. And also if you're watching this on the replay, might be on video, on YouTube or Facebook or on a podcast. So welcome folks to this Facebook Live. If you've not watched any of these before, I'm Brendan from Bluelight for the past 26 years. Whilst I was still a serving police officer, whilst I was a sergeant and then an inspector in Greater Manchester Police, I've been coaching and supporting people to succeed in interviews, in promotion boards and specialist interviews. And over the past 10 years, I've been helping people to succeed in the police recruitment process. So over 12,000 people have now succeeded as a result of my support. So I've seen a lot of things happen in police recruitment. I've seen a lot of changes. I've seen a lot of movement towards lots of numbers that we need to recruit, and then no, we don't need so many. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story in this Facebook Live about why police recruitment is about to fall off a cliff edge. What do I mean by that? Well, I believe that over the next month or two, forces are going to start contracting in terms of the recruitment. They're going to stop recruiting, and when they do start recruiting again, the numbers aren't going to be anything like what they are at the moment. So great to have you on board on this live. If you've got any questions, please do ask in the comments. If you like what you hear, or if it saddens you what you hear, then please do press the appropriate emoji button on Facebook and let me know how you are feeling. But it's great to have you on board so far on this live. I know I didn't announce I was going to do this live, but I thought I'd just share my thoughts with you this evening as I've started to do a little bit of number crunching. So a bit of a history lesson to start with. The police service in England and Wales, I'm not speaking for Scotland and Northern Ireland at the moment, have typically needed to recruit about 7,000 police officers every year just to stand still. So about 12 years ago, England and Wales, police service in England and Wales had about 140,000 officers, about 141,000 I think the number was. And then came austerity. Now for some of you, you're not even going to remember austerity because you might be thinking about joining the police in your age 17, 18, 19. This happened when you were still in shorts, the metaphorical shorts. But I remember it because I was helping people to join the police sort of 11, 12 years ago. As starting to do my coaching and taking it across the country, and found it was incredibly successful. But about this time, forces had to stop recruiting. Why did they have to stop recruiting? Because they had to make massive, massive cuts. There's only so far you can cut back the vehicle fleet. There's only so many police stations you can close. The cuts were enormous. They were incredible, very painful process for the police service to go through. They had to lose lots of support staff. Some forces, one or two forces, just got rid of PCSOs completely. And they had to stop recruiting because about 90% of the budget for the police service is staff. So the only way you can get rid of police officers is by, well, you can't actually. You can't make a police officer redundant. Why? Because police officers are crown servants. They were a servant of Her Majesty, bless her soul, and now they're a servant of His Majesty the King. I know it's hard to say, isn't it? You get so used to saying Her Majesty. His Majesty the King. And so you can't actually make a crown servant redundant. And so for that reason, the only way to reduce the number of police officers was by stopping recruitment. So that 7,000 or 8,000 that is typical for every year started to reduce by a huge amount. And it reduced to probably, my best guess is, it's hard to get the data on this, but my best guess is around 2,000 or less every year. Give you an example, Greater Manchester Police recruited 40 officers every year, 40. That's about 2 or 3 officers going to each division. They were losing vast amounts, hundreds. The size of the force went from 8,100 to about 6,000 in the space of several years. And that was just by people leaving, people resigning, people retiring, and not being recruited back in. Now, all of that changed almost 3 years ago when the Conservative Party announced that they're going to recruit 20,000 extra police officers. Now, it's a bit of a fib, really, that, because they weren't extra at all. We all know this, don't we? We all know this to be true. They weren't extra at all. By this point, the police service had been reduced in England and Wales by about 21,000 police officers. It was at about 120,000. They lost 21,000 officers. All that experience had gone, and it wasn't being replaced. Well, it was. Like I said, some forces recruited in very small numbers. Some forces would recruit in a big spurt, but they might not have recruited for 2 or 3 years. There's several forces that just didn't recruit anyone for 2 or 3 years. And so the Conservative Party decided they were going to reverse that, and in September 2020 would it have been, or September 2019? September 2019 it would have been. They announced they're going to recruit an extra 20,000 police officers on top of what forces were already recruiting. So to get the numbers up to about 140,000 needed the end of austerity for the police service in terms of recruitment. And what's happened since is we've had a massive recruitment drive. Every force has been trying to recruit, and over the past several months they're trying to recruit desperately because they're not going to hit their target of 20,000 police officers. Now, each force was set a target, each force was given a budget, but they were only going to get the money for that if they succeeded in hitting their targets. If they don't hit their target, they get money taken off them. That's the way it works. That's the way it works. So there's several forces out there. I know my own home force, my old force of Greater Manchester Police, is struggling to meet that target now. And there's many reasons for that, but I think one of the biggest reasons is probably because they're in special measures. Who would want to go and join a force that's in special measures? Similarly with the Metropolitan Police, I think they're struggling as well to recruit. Who would want to join a force that's in special measures? And so some forces that are found it really easy to hit their targets, other forces are really struggling. But what's going to happen by March 23, if those officers, those bums on seats, aren't attested, which means that they're sworn in as police officers, if they're not attested by the end of March 2023, that's the end. The funding only lasts until March 2023. And so at the end of March 2023, if they've not recruited the numbers they need to recruit, then forces are going to face a financial penalty. If they do hit the numbers, they will get their funding, they will get the money. But after that, that's the end. The 20,000 uplift finishes end of March 2023. So what's going to happen in March 2023? Actually, what's going to happen now? Because it's now getting towards the end of September 2022. What does that mean? Why is that? You might be thinking, well, that's like 6 months off. I know of very few forces that can recruit from application form to attestation in the space of 6 months. For most forces, it's around 8 months. For many forces, it's over a year. So at this moment in time, if you're looking to apply to join the police, you are not going to start in March 2023. You're going to be starting on a date that's after March 2023. And that explains why there's quite a few forces that have just stopped recruiting now. Because they've realised that no matter how hard they try, they're not going to be able to get you through the doors by the end of March 2023, as in attested, sworn in. So that means starting at the beginning of March and getting you sworn in the last few days of March 2023. So what does this mean? Well, over the past year or two, during the boost of numbers, the police service has seen an enormous recruitment drive, like I said, massive. Around 16,000 police officers being recruited every year. 16,000. I've not looked at the data, but 1 or 2 of those years might have been pushing 17,000. Because they had to recruit, what that 20,000 uplift meant is that they had to recruit over a 3-year period, around 45,000 officers. Now, if we look at quite a few of the officers might resign along the way, it means that they're still going to have to recruit to get to those numbers to hit the target. So it's probably going to be something like 48,000 police officers, which means that in about a year's time, just under half of all the police officers in the country will have less than 5 years service, or is it about 2 years time? No, I think I've done my math correctly. In a year or two, let's just call it a year or two, just under half of all the police officers in the country will have less than 5 years service. So why does that mean that we're going to fall off a cliff edge? Well, what it means is that there's just no money now. We're seeing a real economic pinch in the country. The police have had a pay rise, but it's not being funded by the government. It's coming out of the police, each police force's own coffers. They're going to have to eat into their reserves, or they're just going to have to manage it on their own budget, which means that they have less money to actually spend on policing. Because I'm not seeing the budget increase with inflation for policing, which means that they've got less money than they had this time last year to spend on policing. What does that mean for recruitment? Well, a lot of recruitment teams and a lot of training departments and a lot of divisions are probably getting a bit weary now of all the new officers who are arriving, who have very little experience, and they need experienced people to tutor them, to manage them, to lead them. Those officers just don't exist in some forces, or they do exist in numbers that are too small to cater for all of the officers that have been coming in. And it's been really, really tough, really, really difficult. So next year, my prediction is that a lot of forces are just going to ease back on recruitment. Why? Because they've already had 3 years of massive recruitment. And secondly, because they're just not going to be able to afford it. What it's costing to pay their officers, what it's costing to purchase the things that they need to purchase is going up in price because of inflation and because the police have had a pay rise. Not a pay rise that's in line with inflation, but certainly bigger than what it has been over the past several years. But the police budget hasn't increased to accommodate that. So there's less money. So how do you save that money? You stop recruitment, or you limit it. So from this point onwards, it's really important, folks, if you are applying, that you ensure that your scores are awesome, that you pass everything first time. Everything first time. Because it's going to get harder. We are going to see the return of things like talent pools. Now, some forces are already starting to introduce those talent pools. What do we mean by a talent pool? Well, when we say talent pool, what that means is that your score wasn't high enough to get you through to the next stage. You still passed, but we'll keep you in that talent pool. 10 years ago, I saw people sitting in talent pools for 2 or 3 years, only to be told that actually we don't have a place for you. So you do not want to be in one of those talent pools. How do you avoid that? You get a really high mark that guarantees you get through to the next stage. I'll give you an example of that. Cambridgeshire, with the old Search Assessment Centre, which had a pass mark of 50%. So if you got 50%, you passed. 50% overall, you passed. Cambridgeshire had a pass mark of about, I think it was about 83% at one stage. So you had to get 83% or above to get yourself through to the next stage, which was final interview. How do I know that? Well, I had one client who got 82% and didn't go through to the next stage, and another client who got 84% who went through to the next stage. Really high scores. Other forces like Devon and Cornwall and the Greater Manchester Police, who remember are only recruiting 40 officers a year, they raised their pass mark to 60% and still had people who were getting over 60% who weren't going through to the final interview. That's what happens when recruitment gets smaller. The pass mark might be 50%, but you've got to get a considerable score, much higher than that, to go through to the next stage. And then you've got the same competition with the final interview. Cheshire have already started doing this. Over the past several months, they've been sending people emails to say, well done, you've passed the online assessment centre, you've passed the final interview. However, your scores weren't high enough to take you through to the next stage, which is vetting, fitness, and of course a start date, that precious start date. We may see some forces doing what they've done in the past, which is to set a start date, and then a couple of months or even a month before your start date, you just get an email to say we're no longer going ahead with that intake. And it's not that we're going to carry you on to the next intake, it's just goodbye. That's the end of your journey. So how can we ensure that we don't fall foul of this? 1, you're going to have to get high marks. 2, pass everything first time. And I know it's a shameless plug, but this is what I do. I get people high marks. Actually, I don't get people high marks. I show you the way. You have to do the hard work. You have to do the hard work. So there's links below. Check the links below to all of those services. Come and join just to get a taster of the Facebook group. And it should be ready in about a week. Check the link to my website where you'll be able to sign up for a free course which is all about helping you to prepare for the recruitment process, because so many of you, I find, are ill prepared for the process. Now, thanks everyone for coming to join me this evening on this Facebook Live. I've just got a quick question here from one of you. There's a few questions, I could answer them by just contacting you directly, but Marquetta said, why do you think some forces don't even bother with face-to-face interviews? To me, that's absolutely crazy. Absolutely, but that will change. The only reason they've done away with final interviews is because they've had to get the numbers in. So forces like Avon and Somerset have had to get the numbers in. So the best way of doing that is to make it as easy as possible to get in. But still, it's around 1 in 5 would get in, around 1 in 4, 1 in 5. Before the 20,000 uplift, it was about 1 in 12. And during times of austerity, it's probably around 1 in 30, something like that got in. But it's always been like that. You know, it's always been hard to get into the police. When I joined Cheshire in 1985, only 1 in 40 applicants got in. So it's always been competitive. It's just going to get really competitive again. Now, who knows what may happen in 2 years' time? The Labour Party may get voted in. They've already made an election pledge to increase the number of officers over and above what's been recruited now by 13,000. So that would take our police service up to, in England and Wales, up to about 153, 154,000, because that would be over and above what they'd need to recruit normally. So some interesting time, folks, interesting times. Who knows, in 2 or 3 years' time, we may see the boom days return of police recruitment. But for the moment, at this moment in time, my prediction is we're going to see a downturn in recruitment. So if you are going to apply for the police or you are in the recruitment process, let's make sure you join my 90% club. This is my cadre of people who get over 90% in the online assessment centre and do incredibly well in the final interview. So I look forward to seeing you on some of the webinars, folks. I know for many of you who are watching, you actually are on those webinars now, or you've been on those webinars in the past. So great to have you on board on this Facebook Live. I look forward to seeing you very soon in the future. Bye-bye for now, folks.